Thank y'all.
Thank you, little man.
Yeah, thank you, little man.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Joseph. You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Hope everybody's had a nice week. These high temperatures. Just the joy of living in Texas. I want to start off by saying that, what day it is. Supposed to meet up there in the morning at the flagpole at the high school for prayer. Morning up and sent me that. Of course, it's on my phone, so I'll make sure to announce it after I dismiss church. And but I also want to point out too that next Sunday is going to be Fifth Sunday singing. Okay, so if anybody wants to work on a special to sing, got like a little under a week to practice. So my suggestion is doing this fast. And one that everybody knows, so that way people will sing along with you. And but yeah, it's going to be at the First Methodist Church. I mean, not First Methodist, First Assembly next Sunday at 6 o'clock. And always, if you want to bring finger food or whatever, they have a meal afterwards, or just snacks and fellowship. And pardon?
Which church did you say?
The First Assembly. Yeah, be over at LR's church again, and yeah, we didn't get a Fifth Sunday singing because there was very few of them, and everybody jumped on it. And I didn't want to try to take anything away from LR because I know how their church enjoys stuff like that. Not that we don't, but anywho, well, today we're gonna guess what? We're reading out of a new book today. A new book. And since nobody said anything, we're reading out a new book of First or Second Samuel. Second Samuel. We finished First Samuel last week, and that was where Saul had been killed. Him and Jonathan had died in war, and David had been cast away from the Philistines, and now he's back on his own. Goes and realizes that his village of Ziklag had been attacked, and they had captured his wife and all their stuff and burnt their Ziklag. And David goes and fights the Philistines, gets all their stuff back, and now he's at Ziklag, and this is where he's going to learn about Saul's death. And but I want to do something differently though this time, because the message I want to preach on, I want to cover 2 chapters. And I don't want to preach on this chapter 2 because chapter 2 it's not what the message I want to preach about. But I want to start chapter 2 though, and I'm not going to preach over this, but I want you to go and read it because, like I say, I want you to read it. If you have any questions or anything else, come to me and ask me about it, and I will let you know. But because this right here is just it's talking about where Abner and Joab. Joab is David's general. He's his 4-star general. He's right underneath King David. And Abner is, he was Saul's general, but now he's Ishbosheth is his name. It's Saul's son that Abner puts as, they anoint him as king. That's part of what I'm going to preach over. But anyway, in these 2 chapters, half of this chapter, they're talking about where these 2 men go and they play basically a war game. It's men, like Frank loves, wrestling. It's wrestling, but these guys are using swords. So it's really real, And so, but I want y'all to read over that, because like I say, it's basically a game they're playing between 2 generals with their men. So it kind of takes away from the subject of what I want to preach on. So that's the reason I started with it first, and I want to go back to what I really want to preach on. That's chapter 1. Now, verse 1, chapter 1, it says, after the death of Saul, David returned from defeating the Amalekites, and stayed in Ziklag 2 days. On the third day, a man arrived from Saul's camp with clothes torn and with dust on his head. When he came to David, he fell to the ground and paid him honor. Where have you come from? David asked him. He answered, I escaped from the Israelites' camp. What happened? David asked. Tell me. He said, the men fled from the battle. Many of them fell and died, and Saul and his son Jonathan are dead. Now, just back over here on the last chapter, it talks about where, in 31, when you go back and read that, but it's in the 1 Samuel 31:4. And I want to tell y'all something too. I don't know if people do it or not, but we have this big side right here that has notes written on it. And this right here, I want you to, so that way when I'm preaching on something, if I refer another chapter, instead of turning to it, if I ask you to sometimes, if I just suggest, just write it down so that way you can go back and verify what I'm saying later. And that way we save time from having to skip around in the Bible. But it talks about in 1 Samuel 31:4 where Saul fell on his sword to kill himself. And this right here, as it talks about, where then verse 5, it says, then David said to the young man, who brought him the report, and how do you know that Saul and his son Jonathan are dead? I happened to be on Mount Gilboa, the young man said. There was Saul leaning on his spear with the chariots and riders almost upon him. When he turned and saw me, he called out to me and said, what can I do? He said, who are you? He said, I'm an Amalekite. I answered. Then he said to me, stand over me and kill me. And I am thorns of death, but I'm still alive. So I stood over him and killed him because I knew that after he had fallen, he could not survive. And I took the crown that was on his head and the band on his arm and brought them here to my Lord. Now, Saul here got killed by anyway, you back up. Now, who killed Saul?
He actually killed himself.
Well,
But he asked this Amalekite to finish him off.
yeah. Well, the Amalekite, now, in this kind of irony here, because if you turn and you look back, I thought I marked it. You look back on one of the first things that, let's see, where's it at? Yeah. You look back in chapter 15 of 1 Samuel, and verse 18, just write that down, don't turn to it. And this is what God says to Saul. He said, sent on a mission saying, go and completely destroy those wicked people. The Amalekites war on them until they had wiped them out. God told him to kill all the Amalekites. God said kill every one of them. But Saul, the second thing God told him to do, he disobeyed him because he kept the fatted cows, he kept all this other stuff, but he let Amalekite live. And God told him to kill, like I said last week, when God tells you to kill women, children, everybody, that means everything.
Cleanse the land of evil.
How many people survived out of Sodom and Gomorrah?
No.
Well, three.
Three.
Yeah. But that was because God told them. There would have been four, but there goes Sarah, she kept looking back.
She failed to do what God told her to do.
Yeah. But that was because God told them to get out of there. Now, that's what God shows by example. When he tells you something, he tells you, this is the way I want you to do it. I want you to go in and kill every one of them. Well, Saul failed to do that, and now he's laying on his spear dying, or his sword, whatever it is. He's laying there dying, and guess who comes up on him? Amalekite. A guy that wasn't even supposed to be there anymore. He's supposed to be wiped out of existence. And now he gets the honor of killing him, and what else does he do? He takes his crown off of him and his band that he wore. What's one of the honors? What separates a regular person from a king or a queen? Not just the title, but the fact is that they wear a crown. They wear on top of their head to show everybody, I am the man. I am the woman. This is what shows, I am royalty. I'm over you. Now, Saul, with all his pride, that's what he prided himself on, was being a king. Being a king, and now it's just ripped off his head and he's laying there to die. Now, I won't embellish on that because we know the lifestyle that Saul's lived this entire time. Then David and all the men with him took hold of their clothes and tore them. They mourned and wept and fasted till evening for Saul and his son Jonathan, for the army of the Lord in the house of Israel, because they had fallen by the sword. David said to the young man who brought him the report, where are you from? I am a son of an alien. I'm an Amalekite, he answered. David asked, why were you not afraid to lift your hand to destroy the Lord's anointed? Then David called one of his men and said, go strike him down. So he struck him down and he died. For David said to him, your blood is be on your head, your own head. Your own mouth testified against you when you said, I killed the Lord's anointed. That didn't work out for what he thought it did he? This guy thought he was going to show up to Saul. And David was like, hey man, here's the crown. The guy that's been trying to kill you for the last 20 some odd years. The guy's been chasing you around the desert trying to kill you. And now here's his crown. I killed him for you. And David's all this time like, I could have done it all this time myself. But you took it upon yourself to kill God's anointed. David held that honor high. He did both times. I mean, if it would have been me, I'd have killed Saul the first time I saw him. When he was sitting there relieving himself in the cave, I'd ran over there and I'd have hacked him to pieces. Because it's me versus him. But God waited on David's heart to what? Be patient. Be patient. Now, I'm just keep that in mind about the patient part, okay? Now, because also too, David all this time was what? He'd been forgiving of Saul. He'd been forgiving of Saul because Saul was chasing him and always having him on the run and everything else, waking up every day in the dirt. Now, two things that I want to point out here is David could have been bitter, but was he? No. See, that's the thing. David did exactly what God said and forgave Saul time and time again. And looked at this guy right here. It's like, you didn't have the right to kill him. And now they're mourning. They're mourning Saul, even after he tried to kill him. I mean, how many of you have been punched in the mouth by somebody would really miss them if they died? Like, no, I'm glad that person's dead. Why? Because we hold bitterness in our heart. Sometimes we get bitterness in our lives that we just can't shake. Some people are so bitter they wake up in the morning and they're like, how can I be more bitter? What can I do to make somebody else's life rough? What can I do? Because you know what? I don't enjoy my life, so now I'm going to make somebody else's life rough. I want somebody else's life to be rough because I am bitter. David could have been that way. He could have been that way and gave the guy a high five. Thanks for killing him, man. But he didn't. He's like, you did something against God. We see people do stuff against God all the time, and do we high five them? Some of us do. You get all over the internet, people are doing it all the time. But that's the thing, what David did, David stuck to God's will. And right here, it says David took up the lament concerning Saul and Jonathan, his son Jonathan, in order that both men from Judah be taught his lawman of the bow. And the bow is referred to as a peaceful weapon. When somebody you see the bow, it's for peace. The arrows are the weapon part. Okay, right here, 19. Your glory, O Israel, lies slain on your heights. How the mighty have fallen. Tell it not in Gath. Proclaim it not on the streets of Ashkelon. Lest the daughters of the Philistines be glad. Lest the daughters of the uncircumcised rejoice. O mountains of Gilboa, may you have never dew nor rain, nor fields that get offerings of grain. This is a curse he's putting on the mountain. And you know, if you go to Mount Gilboa, where Saul was slain at, there's no vegetation that grows there. None. Guess who controls that? Guess who that can show you a sign and say, you know what? Boom. David, I'm gonna grant you this curse, David. And that's what he did. He granted that curse on that land. To this day stays barren. For there the shield of the mighty was defiled, for the shield of Saul, no longer rubbed with oil. From the blood of the slain, from the flesh of the mighty, the bow of Jonathan did not turn back. The sword of Saul did not return unsatisfied. Saul and Jonathan, in life you were loved and gracious, and in death you were not parted. They were swifter than eagles. They were stronger than lions. O daughters of Israel, weep for Saul, who clothed you in scarlet and finery, who adored your garments with ornaments of gold. How the mighty have fallen in battle. Second time we said that. Jonathan lay slain on your heights. I grieve you, Jonathan, my brother. You are very dear to me. Your love for me was wonderful, more wonderful than that of a woman. How the mighty have fallen. Third time. I think he's trying to make a point right there, isn't it? The weapons of war have perished. Now that right there, I can say that's where somebody has tried to take away from the Bible, where it says, your love for me was wonderful, more wonderful than that than the love of a woman. I would try to make something funny there, but I'm not. Now over here in chapter 2, it says, in the course of time, David inquired of the Lord, shall I go up to one town, towns of Judah, he asked. The Lord said, go up. David asked, where shall I go? To Hebron, the Lord said. So David went up there with his 2 wives. Now, keep in mind now, I can say this is like reading a newspaper. God's not saying it's okay to have 2 wives. They're just stating what's going on. Okay? Because the thing about David is David's life next to Jesus is most written about in the Bible than anybody. And they read the good and the bad. His whole life is exposed right here in these 2 books. Who would want their life written down in these 2 books of all the things we did for everybody in the world to be able to read? Would anybody want to air out your laundry like that? Would you want your life story written for everybody to see?
I want everybody to smell it.
I'm talking about all the bad things that you did in that darkness where you thought nobody else was watching you.
Oh, everybody's watching.
Well, I'm saying, not everybody. But that's the thing about David. But that's what I'm saying, the 2 wives. And then right here, jump down to verse 4, the bottom of it, or just say, then the men of Judah came to Hebron, and they anointed David king over the house of Judah. Okay, David's been on the run for like 20 plus years right now, and now he's been anointed all this time to be king. 20 years later, he finally gets anointed. But where's it at? Over one city, Judah. Judea. One city. That's all he's king over right now. Now, this is going to bring my message in full circle. Drop down to 7. Now, then be strong and brave, for Saul master is dead, and the house of Judea has been appointed to me king over them. Meanwhile, Abner, son of Ner, the commander of Saul's army, had taken Ishbosheth, son of Saul, and brought him over to Mahal, and he made him king over Gilead, Ashurah, Zerillah, and you see that one too, and also Ephraim, Benjamin, and all of Israel. Now, the reason I read that right there is when I'm going to stop reading that. Besides, I got a couple of Psalms I'm going to read. But David has just now been anointed king over one little city, and Saul's son was not anointed by God, is now king of Israel and all these other little towns. Who would be upset by that? If you've been running in the desert all this time, hiding from God's anointed God king that wanted to kill you, sleeping on the dirt, sleeping on the rocks, just no rest, uncomfortable. We complain about back problems now, and we have nice fluffy beds to lay in. We can go to pay people to rub our back. We can go to the doctor and get a shot, get medicine and everything else. These people didn't have that. They laid out their dirt for 20 years, and now he gets anointed over one little town. One little town. And all of a sudden, and the thing about this is this son the reason he wasn't killed in battle? Because he wasn't a ruler, he wasn't a king, he wasn't a warrior. And now they put him out there, and David's like, man, I've been a warrior all this time fighting for Israel. Now you're going to put a guy that's book smart over my country? This is what I'm talking about. What I'm looking for here is patience. David was so patient with God. Because if that would have been any other, they would have ran over there and they would have killed that cat, and they would have had, okay, now I'm king of everything. But David didn't. And I say this because now you can turn to, or you can just mark it in your books. But Psalms 28:14, this is written by David. It says, wait for the Lord, be strong, take heart, and wait for the Lord. Okay. Psalms 33, verse 20. We wait and hope before the Lord. He is our help, our shield. In him our hearts rejoice, for we trust in his holy name. Last one. Oh yeah, okay. Last one. Psalms 40, verse 1. It says, I waited patiently for the Lord. He turned to me and heard my cry. He lifted me out of the slimy pit, out of the mud and mire. He set my feet on a rock. He gave me a firm place to stand. He put a new song in my mouth, a hymn for praise of our God. Many will see and fear and put their trust in the Lord. What did David do? He feared the Lord, and he also trusted him. Now, in weeks to come, it'll get revealed to you. But the fact is that one of the main things, one of the biggest things that we lack in our life is patience. We want it, and we want it now. God, you haven't answered my prayers, and it's been 2 whole weeks. 2 whole weeks. Oh, I didn't answer my prayers. 2 weeks. Oh, it's been 2 months. Try 20 years. Try 20 years. Not only that, but having a man trying to kill you in the process. And you run 20 years, and now you just get one little city. Well, this guy, he's not even anointed by God. He's blessed with Israel. You get one little city. And yet he's what? Still patient with God. And that's what I want us, if we take anything out of this message, is just realize, not just God, but can I be patient with my children? How many have children that kind of test you every now and then? If you're not raising your hand, you're lying.
I don't know about every now and
If
then.
you're not raising your hand, you're lying, okay? We all have children that test us.
Every
There's
day.
some things that bother, they do, that they test us. Little,
Every day.
even when they're little, all the way from the time they're little to they're grown, they still test us. Whether it's like, okay, it's my birthday, they didn't text me, they didn't call me. But we gotta be patient with everybody around us, whether we like them or not. And we gotta get, one thing that we gotta learn for too is also that forgiveness part. Get that bitterness out of your life. Because bitterness just eats you up inside. I've had people been bitter against me, and I didn't like it. And I realized I was bitter against people too as well. But I gave them forgiveness, and I got that out of my heart. I look for how I can forgive people, because the thing is when you forgive people, what you're doing is you're removing yourself from the equation. You're not going to change that person. You're not going to change it by forgiving them. But what you do is you remove yourself away from it and say, you know what, God? Now this is between you and him. I forgave it. I'm moving on. So now it's up to you, God, to fix it. And once you do that, you relieve yourself of it. And that way you can move on to something else, because you know what? A clear mind is a beautiful thing to have. You would bow your heads.